Hello, and welcome back as we continue with Phantom. Chapter 7. A few months after I began to study architecture with Professor Gazot, Erik asked me for a mirror. I was taken so completely by surprise I did not know what to say to him. My first instinct was to refuse, but since my instincts, where he was concerned, were usually wrong, I decided to yield to his bizarre request. Fetching a small hand mirror from the drawer in my room, where I was careful to keep it hidden, I gave it to him with uneasy reluctance. He never spoke about the face, but since I was still regularly awakened by a single scream of terror from his room, I assumed the memory still troubled him. He took the mirror from me with exaggerated care, as though it were a poisonous snake that might bite, and I turned it hastily face down upon the table. He was panting a little, as though he'd been running hard, and I sensed such fear in him that I was sorely tempted to snatch the mirror away. But I resisted the urge and waited. If I took off the back, he began hesitantly, would I still be able to see things? No, I said steadily. The reverse surface of the mirror reflects no image. You will see nothing at all. His sigh of relief was painfully and unmistakably audible. It has a safe side, then, he muttered to himself. That's good. He glanced up at me uncertainly. May I look inside, Mama? If you wish. I watched him remove the back from the mirror with dexterous fingers and prise up a loose corner of the tin foil. It's only glass underneath, he cried in astonishment. It's only glass underneath and a piece of tin. How does the face get inside? I felt cold with misery as he looked up at me. All that brilliance, all that learning, and still the simple truth of this eluded him. The face was not on the inside, Erik. It was on the outside. A mirror merely reflects an image of any object that is placed in front of it. Then how are the images changed into monsters? He demanded seriously. Is it magic? Will you show me how it works? I felt sobs massing in my throat, and as I took up the mirror and looked into it, I was aware of him straining to see over my shoulder. Oh, it's not working, he exclaimed with disgusted disappointment. There's nothing there. It must be broken. I altered the angle of the mirror so my image swam abruptly into his view, and he gave me a cry of delight. Look, he said with great excitement, there's two of you. The magic has changed. Erik, there is no magic. Whenever anyone looks into a mirror, they see a reflection of themselves. Nothing else but themselves. A mirror has no power to show a monster unless that monster stands in front before it. But I saw one, he insisted angrily. I saw one. I laid the mirror face downward on the table in front of him. Yes, I said gently. I know what you saw. I left him alone and then went into the adjoining room to wait for the first scream of understanding, but it did not come. When I looked in, I saw that he was playing with the mirror, holding it carefully at an angle which did not show his face. Presently, I heard him go upstairs, and when I went to retrieve the mirror from the table, I found it gone. He came down to supper, seemingly perfectly calm, and asked if he might have the mirror to keep. Surprised and relieved, I agreed to his request without question, hoping that the trauma of acceptance was now behind us. But next day, I found the mirror broken in half into a dozen pieces, each laid carefully face down on the chest of drawers in his room. When I asked indignantly why he had done this, he explained patiently they had better magic that way, and he proceeded to pop the pieces of glass above a drawing at angles which produced a strange, distorted maze of reflections. You see, Mama, you were wrong about mirrors, he said triumphantly. We can make all sorts of magic with them. I wonder what would show if I bent them. Do you think they would go soft enough if I put them in the fire? I have no idea, I said in horror, and don't even think of trying such a silly trick. All you will do is succeed in burning yourself. Erik. Erik, are you listening to me? Yes, Mama, he said innocently, but he did not look at me as though he said it, and I was immediately suspicious of such an easy acquiesce. He did normally not give in so easily. I would have taken the pieces of glass away from him on the spot, but I hesitated to provoke one of his terrible rages, which would only end in a savage beating. Perhaps I should be glad that he had overcome his irrational terror of such an important everyday object, and if he burned himself, well, he would not do it again. I decided to leave well enough alone. Madeline? Marie came to the kitchen, and as she closed the door behind her with a furtive gesture, I became aware that her earnest face was creased with anxiety. I think you should know, she continued uneasily, that Erik has asked me to buy some glass and tin, and the glass cutter. He gave me this and begged me not to tell you. She held out her palm to display money, 100 francs, and I frowned. So that's where the money went. I had my suspicions. What do you say to them? She said, well, of course I knew the money couldn't possibly be his. I told him it was wrong to steal, and he just looked at me as though he didn't understand a word I was saying. I nodded grimly. He understands only what he wishes to understand. All he cares about for at the moment is satisfying this morbid obsession with illusion and magic. And he knows how much it angers me. I told him last week he could not have that glass. What on earth does he want it for? He wants to make mirrors, can you believe it? Magic mirrors that will only show him what he wants to see. For hundreds of years, the Venetians kept the secret of their craft from the rest of the world. And now this child, this crazy child, thinks he can start making mirrors in an attic bedroom. Thank God I never told him about the mercury, or he would have demanded that too, I suppose. What in God's name makes him behave like this? Marie laid the money on the table and looked at me thoughtfully. I think you must let him have the glass, which is so very important to him, she said after a moment. Oh, really? I retorted coldly. Perhaps you think he should have that mercury, too, so that he can poison us all when the fancy takes him. She shrugs uneasily. Madeline, if you don't give the glass to him, he will simply find another way of taking him for himself. Do you want him to start breaking your windows? I stared at her in horror. You think he's capable of such wickedness? She shook her head slowly. I don't think he would consider it wickedness, Madeline. Simply the next logical step towards his objective. The end justifies the means, I said softly, looking inward. This is the teaching of the devil. She was silent, looking at the floor, and I knew in her heart she was forced to agree. At the end of the week, when I presented him with the glass and tinfoil, I had to turn away from his cry of delight. He disappeared to his room for the rest of the day, and that evening I found him rigid with fury at his failure. There must be a better way, he muttered. I shall ask Professor Gizzle when he comes tomorrow. Mirrors, echoed the professor vaguely as Erik pounced on him at the front door the next day. Well, of course, we've always used tin and mercury for the backing up till now. Mercury. I saw Erik stiffen with annoyance. I didn't know about the mercury. It hardly signifies, continued the professor jovially. No one will ever be using that laborious method much longer. I believe a new process called silvering has been recently been discovered in Germany. Germany, Erik replied solemnly. How far away is that? The dining room door closed behind them, and I heard no more. From that point, I made it my business to keep Erik supplied with any material he asked for, no matter how bizarre the request might be. Glass, metal, nuts, and bolts and springs. They were toys that I no longer denied him, for simple reasons that I dared not. I was beginning to understand the danger of attempting to block the natural outlet of an active volcano. I was also beginning to understand Father Mansard's urgent concern for Erik's soul. Well, that's the end of that chapter. See you again.